The question of how and why the United Nations is the crux of the great conspiracy to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and the enslavement of the American people within a UN one-world dictatorship is a complete and unknown mystery to the vast majority of the American people. The reason for this unawareness of the frightening danger to our country and to the entire free world is simple. The masterminds behind this great conspiracy have absolute control of all of our mass communications media, especially television, the radio, the press, and Hollywood. We all know that our State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House have brazenly proclaimed that they have the right and the power to manage the news, to tell us not the truth, but what they want us to believe. They have seized that power on orders from their masters of the great conspiracy. And the objective is to brainwash the people into accepting the phony peace bait to transform the United States into an enslaved unit of the United Nations one world government.
Never before in history has it been so obvious that the individuals pulling the strings in Western society are not our elected leaders. Joe Biden's presidency is its own supporting evidence that American presidents are little more than public-facing figureheads of the Western deep state establishment. But if the president isn't at the top of the political food chain in America, then who is? How long have subversive groups been orchestrating world events? Who are these men behind the curtain? Unfortunately, even entertaining these ideas will get you branded as a conspiracy theorist. The Oxford English Dictionary defines conspiracy theory as, quote, the theory that an event or phenomenon occurs as a result of a conspiracy between interested parties, a belief that some covert but influential agency, typically political in motivation and oppressive in intent, is responsible for an unexplained event. The term conspiracy theory is itself the subject of a conspiracy theory, which claims the term was popularized by the CIA after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Ostensibly, the purpose was to create a derogatory label to discredit conspiratorial believers, particularly critics of the Warren Commission, by making them a target of ridicule. But the idea that powerful men conspire behind the scenes is a concept as old as time itself. The idea that it is only fringe conspiracy theorists who've warned about clandestine powers is a historical fallacy. Our nation's founder, George Washington, shortly before he died, read John Robinson's book, Proofs of a Conspiracy, and immediately expressed his take on the threat of Illuminism to the preacher who had sent it to him. It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. John Robinson, among many contemporary and future researchers, was adequately convinced that the machinations of a group known as the Bavarian Illuminati had penetrated into the New World. British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, as far back as 1856, told the House of Commons, quote, "It is useless to deny, because it is impossible to conceal, that a great part of Europe, the whole of Italy and France, and a great portion of then fragmented Germany, to say nothing of other countries, is covered with a network of these secret societies. And what are their objects? They do not attempt to conceal them. They do not want constitutional government. They want to change the tenure of land, to drive out the present owners of the soil, and to put an end to ecclesiastical establishments." President Woodrow Wilson, who was intimately connected to conspiratorial power, once wrote that, quote, "Some of the biggest men in the United States, in the fields of commerce and manufacture, are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." Former New York Mayor John F. Hyland stated in 1922, quote, The real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which is like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy length over our city, state, and nation. At the head of this octopus are the Rockefeller Standard Oil interests and a small group of powerful banking houses generally referred to as the international bankers, who virtually run the US government for their own selfish purposes. Even the radical communist FDR, who was no stranger to secret societies, once said, quote, "In politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way." JFK seemed to have a clear understanding of the forces he was up against when he made his now famous address before the American Newspaper Publishers Association.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
Important figures from our history seem to believe that secret societies were shaping world events behind the scenes. If so, did these groups fade into history, or are their traditions carried on to this day? For many, the term secret society conjures up images of apron-wearing Freemasons or cloaked figures practicing ritual magic. And to be sure, this still might happen, but the clandestine fraternities of today have taken on a more modernized appearance. This is perhaps most notably exemplified by groups such as the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the elusive Bilderberg Group, and of course, Klaus Schwab's more public-facing World Economic Forum. Some might think it in poor taste to equate these organizations to secret societies, but be that as it may, there are remarkable parallels. The Trilateral Commission publishes its membership and position papers, but its inner workings are hidden. It also publishes a membership roll, whose members are pledged to secrecy regarding its goals and operations. The Bilderberg Group takes things a step further, keeping both its agenda and membership a secret. There is no secret society more widely discussed than the Illuminati. The term Illuminati dates back to at least the 15th century Spain, where it was pronounced Alumbrados. Both terms are plural of the Latin illuminatus, meaning revealed or enlightened. The first organized group was established by a professor of canon law and former Jesuit Adam Weishaupt on May Day, 1776. The modern incarnation of the Illuminati is more of a gimmick for self-important Hollywood types. They even have a website where you can buy all the hottest Illuminati merchandise. It may be impossible to know the true intentions of the original Illuminati, but the general consensus is that their goals included the subversive overthrow of all world governments and religions, the bringing forth of a religion of reason, and a one-world government. Many believe their designs have carried on into the present day. American writer Myron Fagan, in a famous lecture called The Illuminati and the Council on Foreign Relations, posits that the Illuminati, having become exposed over time to the general public, carried on its work under various other names. He claimed that the United Nations is the continuation of the Illuminati agenda in modern times, and that its American facilitators carry on this Luciferian work from within the confines of a shadowy think tank.
In the United States, immediately after World War I, they set up what they called the Council on Foreign Relations, commonly referred to as the CFR. And this CFR is actually the Illuminati in the United States. And its hierarchy, the masterminds in control of the CFR, to a very great extent, are the descendants of the original Illuminati conspirators.
The council began as an outgrowth of a series of meetings conducted during World War I. Woodrow Wilson's confidential advisor, Edward Mandell House, had gathered roughly 100 of the most prominent men in the country at the time to discuss the post-war world. The group of foreign policy elite originally dubbed themselves as the Inquiry. The men helped concoct Wilson's famous 14 points, which he presented to Congress in January of 1918. The points could be seen as a globalist wish list, calling for the removal of all economic barriers between nations, equality of trade conditions, and the formation of a general association of nations. House described himself as a Marxist socialist, yet his actions reflected the more subversive Fabian socialism. He penned a novel several years prior called Philip Drew, Administrator. It's purported that he gave a copy of this work to Woodrow Wilson to read on a trip to Bermuda. In Philip Drew, House describes a clandestine effort in the United States with the goal of establishing a central bank, a graduated income tax, and the control of both political parties. Within 2 years of publication, 2 of these objectives, if not all 3, had already been accomplished. By late 1918, the stalemate on the Western Front, in addition to the entry of America into the war, forced Germany and the Central Powers to accept terms for peace, paving the way for the subsequent Paris Peace Conference of 1919, which led to the Treaty of Versailles. Attending the Paris Peace Conferences were President Woodrow Wilson and his closest advisors, including Colonel House, international bankers Paul Verberg and Bernard Baruch, and almost 24 members of the Inquiry. The attendees embraced Wilson's plan for peace, including the formation of a League of Nations. However, under American law, the covenant had to be ratified by the U.S. Senate, which failed to do so, many senators being distrusting of a supranational organization. Despite this setback, House met with both British and American Peace Conference delegates in Paris's Majestic Hotel on May 30th and resolved to form an Institute of International Affairs with branches in both America and England. If they were to be denied their globalist League of Nations, then they would carry on their goals behind the scenes, protected from public scrutiny. The English branch became known as the Royal Institute for International Affairs, known today as the Chatham House. The U.S. branch was incorporated on July 21st of that year as the Council on Foreign Relations, the name it still goes by today. The Council's primary founders included some of the world's most powerful individuals in the early 1900s. Oil magnate and philanthropist John D. Rockefeller, who is arguably one of the most recognized men in American history, is alleged to have helped fund the organization alongside other international bankers and financiers. Men like Paul Verberg, Jacob Schiff, Otto Kahn, and representatives of the family of J.P. Morgan. Interestingly enough, these same funders all happen to have been intimately involved with both the Panic of 1907 and the ensuing creation of the Federal Reserve. The CFR's founding president was J.P. Morgan Jr.'s personal attorney, John W. Davis. Vice President Paul Cravath also represented Morgan Properties. The council's first chairman was Russell Leffingwell, one of Morgan's partners, as well as a trustee of the Carnegie Corporation. Since most of the early CFR members had connections to Morgan in one way or another, it's been said that the council was heavily influenced by Morgan interests. Additionally, the CFR played a key role in American policy during World War II and beyond. Journalist J. Anthony Lucas noted, quote, "From 1945 well into the 60s, council members were in the forefront of America's globalist activism." According to the CFR's own mission statement, it reads, "The Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, is an independent, nonpartisan membership organization, think tank, and publisher dedicated to being a resource for its members, government officials, business executives, journalists, educators, and students, civic and religious leaders, and other interested citizens in order to help them better understand the world and the foreign policy choices facing the United States and other countries." But critics dispute this goal, noting that the CFR has had its hand in every major 20th century conflict. Some researchers believe the CFR is set on world domination through multinational business, international treaties, and world government. Admiral Chester Ward retired Judge Advocate General of the U.S. Navy and a longtime CFR member, was quoted saying, "The main purpose of the Council on Foreign Relations is promoting the disarmament of U.S. sovereignty and the national independence and submergence into an all-powerful, one-world government." He also went on to warn, quote, "The most powerful clique and the elitist groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty and the national independence of the United States." A second clique of international members in the CFR comprises the Wall Street international bankers and their key agents. Primarily, they want the world banking monopoly from whatever power ends up in the control of global government. He detailed the CFR's methods in a 1975 book co-authored by Phyllis Schlafly titled Kissinger on the Couch. He states, quote, "Once the ruling members of the CFR have decided that the U.S. government should adopt a particular policy, the very substantial research facilities of CFR are put to work to develop arguments, intellectual and emotional, to support the new policy and to confound and discredit, intellectually and politically, any opposition."
Thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, the mothership in New York City, but it's good to have an outpost of the Council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the Council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
The inner workings of the CFR may be obscured from the public, but they do produce a publication called Foreign Affairs, which some believe is used to signal desired policies in future direction to those in power. Even the Encyclopedia Britannica admitted, quote, "Ideas put forward tentatively in this journal often, if well received by foreign affairs community, appear later as U.S. government policy or legislation. Prospective policies that fail this test usually disappear. In effect, laws and government policies are not written by the people, but by the CFR for the benefit of the ruling class." It is worth noting that every U.S. government administration since the Council's inception has been packed with CFR members. The Clinton administration had over 100 Council members serving. Even Donald Trump's administration wasn't free of CFR influence. Gary Allen, whose book None Dare Call It Conspiracy sold more than 5 million copies despite being ignored by the establishment media, commented just before the 1972 elections, quote, "There really was not a dime's worth of difference between presidential candidates. Voters were given the choice between CFR World Government Advocate Nixon and CFR World Government Advocate Humphrey. Only the rhetoric was changed to fool the public." Allen echoed the dismay of many independent researchers who were suspicious of the CFR's influence on our elections when he wrote, quote, "Democrats and Republicans must break the insider control of their respective parties. The CFR types and their flunkies and social climbing opportunist supporters must be invited to leave, or else the patriots must leave." The CFR's tentacles reach deep into the intelligence community as well. Almost every CIA director since Allen Dulles has been a CFR member. Researchers have alleged that the CIA, in fact, serves as a security force, not just for corporate America, but for friends, relatives, and fraternity brothers of the CFR. This arrangement seems to serve as a two-way street. According to some researchers, the CFR has long been the CIA's principal constituency in the American public. Article 2 of the CFR's bylaws states that anyone revealing details of the CFR meetings can be dropped from membership, thus qualifying the CFR as a secret society. This has caused the CFR to be subject of a slew of conspiracies. The CFR's invitation-only membership, which was originally capped at 1,600 participants, today numbers more than 5,000 of the most influential leaders in finance, commerce, communications, and academia. CFR admission is an extremely discriminating and grueling process. Candidates must be proposed by a current member, seconded by another member, approved by a committee, screened by a professional staff, and then finally must be approved by a board of directors. The organization's secrecy has been thoroughly protected by the Western media. Journalist J. Anthony Lucas noted in 1971, quote, "Analysts of the Soviet press say the council crops up more regularly in Pravda and Izvestia than it does in the New York Times." The CFR's board of directors has historically been a who's who of globalist financiers, establishment politicians, representatives of the military-industrial complex, and heads of the world's largest corporations. Current board members include BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, Emerson Collective founder and Ghislaine Maxwell confidant Lorraine Powell Jobs, and Senior Vice President and CFO of Alphabet and Google, Ruth Porat, to just name a few. The general CFR membership is composed of Wall Street types, international bankers, executives of powerful foundations, members of various think tanks, and other tax-exempt foundations. There are also ambassadors, past and present presidents of the United States, secretaries of states, lobbyists and media conglomerate owners, as well as university presidents and professors, even federal and Supreme Court judges and members of the military from both NATO and the Pentagon. The running theme here is power. In addition to individual membership, the CFR also offers a corporate membership program, through which subscribing companies are provided a twice-a-year dinner briefing by government officials like the Treasury Secretary or the CIA Director. Some of the major corporate members include Apple, Bank of America, BlackRock, Chevron, Citi, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, Google, Meta, PepsiCo, NASDAQ, and Morgan Stanley. This list, though, is by no means comprehensive. In fact, it barely even scratches the surface. Though it is impossible to know the inner workings of the CFR without an insider coming forward, it is safe to say that the group's influence is palpable and its reach is pervasive. Maybe the CFR is exactly what it claims to be. Maybe it's not. Are these prestigious individuals merely part of some fancy club? Or are they the proverbial men behind the curtain? Our enduring uncertainty is the only constant when it comes to modern secret societies.